Hello and welcome. I'm Rosanna Lockwood. You're watching W News, broadcasting live from the Al Arabiya headquarters. These are our top stories. Authorities investigate a motive as details continue to emerge about the suspected shooter in the second apparent assassination attempt against Donald Trump. World leaders and even Trump's political opponents join forces to condemn the attempted attack and continued political violence. And evacuations as residents of Poland and the Czech Republic prepare for another night of heavy rain amid catastrophic floods across Central Europe. Well, we do start in the US, where authorities are working to identify a motive behind a second apparent assassination attempt made against Republican contender Donald Trump on Sunday. The suspect has been identified by American media as a 58-year-old man with a long arrest record who's an active supporter of Ukraine. Secret Service agents who came in for criticism over security failures in a previous attempt against Trump this time engaged the alleged shooter and recovered an AK-47 style rifle. World leaders are condemning the attack, and Trump's Democratic opponent, Kamala Harris, saying she's disturbed by the events and thankful former President Trump is safe. Well, for more on this, I'm joined now from Washington, D.C. by our correspondent there, Caroline Malone. Caroline, good to see you. Talk to us about the latest, because there have been some developments in just the last few hours.
They certainly have. The suspect actually has appeared in court in Florida, in a federal court. He has been charged with multiple gun possession charges, including possession of a gun with an obscured serial number, suggesting that he didn't get that legally. And actually, the detail has come out that he is a convicted felon of having illegal possession of a gun in the past. So this is not his first time brushing with the law. He will now appear in court in another 2 weeks' time, where he will be arraigned and he will have a chance to make his plea, whether it's guilty or not guilty, to these gun possession charges. Now, this is, of course, after the incident on Sunday in which Secret Service managed to find this person who was sticking a gun into the golf course a few holes ahead of where Donald Trump was playing golf. They were doing a sweep to try and protect the area, fortunately spotted him, opened fire. He escaped, but due to a witness who managed to identify the suspect and also take down his license plate of his car, they and the sheriff of the neighboring county were able to find him, stop him and arrest him. So fortunately, in this situation, this suspect was found. He's already appeared in court and he is due to be arraigned in 2 weeks' time.
Now, whenever there is this type of event, and seemingly more regularly now, worryingly, but there is always an attempt to try and learn more about the shooter, about the alleged shooter, about what his motives could have been, his background, his history. This person in particular had a lot of online presence. So what has been learned?
He absolutely did have a lot of online presence, and so a lot that can be read into him at this point, though of course I'm sure throughout the court case we'll hear more. So, you know, he's tweeted in the past, he's been on social media, he's talked about having voted for Trump in 2016, he's talking about having been disappointed in Trump and also then supporting the Democrats, talking about the importance of supporting democracy and concerns over Trump potentially getting back into the White House again. But above and beyond that, he's actually tweeted a lot and been an active supporter of Ukraine. He's actually been in US media interviews in the past, and there are videos that are now quite easy to access online, showing him talking about what he sees as the importance of supporting Ukraine. It's even thought that he went to Ukraine to try and help Ukrainian soldiers in their fight against Russia. He wasn't given a place to fight, though, because he was deemed to be too old and didn't have any military experience. So, you know, seems like this person is somewhat misguided in going to Ukraine to begin with. His family members have also been interviewed, including his son, who's believed to live in Hawaii. He spoke briefly just at the beginning before really knowing any details, saying that he was a loving father and he was very surprised to hear about what had allegedly happened. But yes, this is a person that has spoken quite openly on social media about his views, about his political views, but perhaps more importantly, this is a person that appears to have illegal possession of a gun and is also a convicted felon. So this is a potential criminal that should have been known or could have been known potentially to the forces before the incident.
I mean, another angle that the news is certainly taking today, and online speculation, and obviously we don't dabble in that, but is about the level of Trump's security. And there is a real discussion to be had about this, because this is the second, it appears, attempted assassination attempt on the man running for the White House. And the first time around, there were certainly concerns his security weren't strong enough. What's being spoken about now there?
Well, absolutely. I mean, one attempted assassination is shocking enough, but to have two in just over 2 months really is shocking at another level. We know from the first incident, that was back in Butler, Pennsylvania in July, the person who tried to shoot Trump obviously missed. He narrowly got his ear, but he did kill someone in the crowd. And a lot of the speculation, a lot of the scrutiny at the time was on why the Secret Service hadn't secured the perimeter. They hadn't secured the rooftop where this suspect, now deceased because he was taken out by a security agent after the incident, but why he was able to get on that rooftop, why that area wasn't protected when there was an open rally, a public rally happening. And of course, you know, they knew that Trump would be speaking. And for this second incident to happen so soon after really does even more raise questions about whether Trump has an adequate level of protection for these types of events. And even when he's, you know, playing in a sort of somewhat private setting, playing golf in his private life on a Sunday, he's, you know, potentially being targeted here. President Biden actually spoke briefly on it just this morning when he came out of the White House. He came over to the media and he said that he thinks the Secret Service need more resources. Some suggestion that he wanted Congress to do more to provide, whether it's funding or personnel, he didn't specify. But potentially there could be, you know, moves now to get more funding and personnel for the Secret Service. We've also heard members of Congress, Mike Johnson, who is the Republican House Speaker. He was talking as well about the need to have higher levels of protection for Trump. One important distinction is, because Trump is a former president, not a current president, and also a candidate, he has a certain level that's deemed to be adequate at this point. But if he had been a president, if it was President Biden, for instance, on a golf course, the entire golf course would have been covered by Secret Service. So it would have been a very clear, different level, higher level of protection. And after this second attempt in 2 months, you know, we can only imagine that very quickly Secret Service will be upping their protection for Trump and potentially Harris as well.
And yeah, I mean, you mentioned Harris and Biden there. They both obviously released statements of support for Donald Trump in the last sort of 24 hours, condemning the violence, condemning the attempted attack. But Donald Trump's actually come back in just the recent few hours on Fox News, it seems, actually blaming Democrat rhetoric for what happened to him.
Yeah, I mean, the rhetoric has evolved definitely over the last 2 months. Shortly after the first attempted assassination on Trump, Trump appeared at the Republican National Convention in those videos with his ear that was covered with a bandage. And he spoke about national unity. He spoke about decreasing political violence, how there's no place for it. And we've had just on Monday, both Biden and Harris in statements condemning any kind of political violence, talking about how they're very glad that Trump is okay and saying there's absolutely no room for political violence. But we've seen this rhetoric over the last 2 months evolve somewhat from the Trump side, in which he is now, and others in the Republican Party, blaming Harris, blaming the Democrats for what they deem to be language that is potentially encouraging this type of situation. I will say that there are similarities between the two situations, and that is they're both men, they're both white men. One was a younger man, this man is in his 50s. Both have got possession of a gun illegally or through a family member. In the case of the last suspect, who was just a young man, got it through his family member. So they are certainly able to get access to firearms in a country where there is, you know, a prolific use of firearms. And it does happen a lot more. And there is a lot of gun crime here. You combine that with someone that's potentially mentally unstable. And I'm sure there'll be a lot more talk of this in the next few weeks and months. Then you have this type of potential situation. I think as well, the conversation may move towards what can Donald Trump and Kamala Harris afford to do in these very tense times? Will their movements be somewhat restricted, potentially even more so than they have been already? We've seen, though, Donald Trump come out and he's, you know, wanting to be strong and saying he's going to carry on as normal, that this won't stop him. He won't be afraid of it. But you can only imagine that particularly the people trying to protect him will want him to be in a very safe space going forward.
Certainly, you can imagine that. Look, our Washington, D.C. correspondent, Caroline Malone, thank you. Well, still to come here on W News, residents in towns and villages across Central Europe brace for another night of heavy rains as flooding continues to devastate homes.
From the White House to Gaza, Kiev to Beijing, elections, economics and the environment compete with conflicts and other complex issues for our attention. In an age of fake news, deepfake and artificial intelligence,
they've got to have a vote and a say.
It's important to look beyond the loudest voice to understand the truth. From newsmakers to groundbreakers,
My campaign is going very well.
presidents, prime ministers, princes and peacemakers, and cultural tastemakers.
As Arabs, as Middle Eastern, we're too emotional.
Join me on The Riz Khan Show for empowering conversation.
To Central Europe now, where residents of towns and villages in Poland and the Czech Republic are being evacuated in anticipation of another night of heavy rain. Over the past few days, the region has been battered by storms and the worst flooding in over 2 decades. At least 14 people from Austria to Romania now reported dead as a result of the extreme weather, with that number expected to rise in coming days. Poland's government declaring a natural disaster and setting aside a $260 million relief fund. Well, to get a bit more detail from there on the ground, I'm joined now from Budapest, Hungary, by our correspondent Pablo Gutierrez. Pablo, talk to us a little bit about how it's hit Budapest and Hungary, this weather.
Well, let's begin by saying that Storm Boris has brought the heaviest rainfalls that Central and Eastern Europe has seen in decades. What we are seeing now is a slow-moving system that has caused widespread flooding, evacuations, and deaths. There's been fatalities confirmed in Poland, Romania, and Austria. And as you indicated, the Czech Republic and Poland are among the heaviest hit countries, with hundreds of homes devastated and also critical infrastructure systems severely damaged. Now, we expect this storm to roll into Hungary within the second half of this week, and authorities are already preparing for this. They expect this could be catastrophic if not all the systems are in place, and that's why they're not taking chances right now.
Talk to me about what's expected tonight then, because like you said, there's already very damaged systems, and then there's concern, certainly in places like Poland and the Czech Republic, that there's going to be more bad weather tonight. So how bad could that situation be?
Well, the situation could get worse as this storm rolls south into Hungary. We are expected to see the levels at the Danube River rise to about 8.5 meters. That is close to the record set back in 2013 when flooding wreaked havoc here in the capital city, here in Budapest. Now, authorities have been placing close attention to the flood-prone areas around Budapest. They have placed around 800,000 sandbags. Earlier today, Prime Minister Viktor Orban met with the flood preparedness team. They are making sure that all available resources are in place in case there needs to be an evacuation and in case there is severe damage, but they're hoping that will not be a fact. They're hoping that everything they're putting in place could prevent severe damages here in Hungary.
Yeah, talk to me a little bit more about the official response. Poland, for example, has created a relief fund for those affected by the floods. Is there a sense amongst countries in Central Europe that are affected that authorities and the governments there are doing enough to help?
Well, what we're seeing right now, for instance, here in Hungary, is that authorities are all hands on deck. We have also heard from the European Union. They are ready to assist all of the damaged countries. We don't know the extent of the damage so far because this system is continuing continuing to move. So we expect to hear more from the government and their response as the week and the days progress. But as far as Hungary, the government has said that they are ready, they're prepared, and they're asking the people to remain at home during the second half of this week just to save lives and to prevent further damages.
Just finally, Pablo, how unusual is this type of weather? Obviously, we're at the beginning of September when Europe tends to tip into that autumn weather. But weather of this extremity, how unusual is it?
Well, experts say that we should get used to extreme weather events like this. As we know, Europe is the world's fastest warming continent. And when you have a situation like this, basically they're saying the atmosphere is warming and it's holding more water vapor, and that produces heavier rains. So unfortunately here in Europe, they're saying we should brace for events like this one. All caused, according to them, due to climate change.
Our correspondent Pablo Gutierrez joined us there from Budapest in Hungary. Well, to some stories from around the world now. Elon Musk deleted a post on Monday morning that questioned why former President Donald Trump has faced 2 apparent assassination attempts in recent months, while President Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris have not encountered any. Elon Musk later claiming that this post was a joke. Russia has been evacuating residents from villages in the Kursk region. Kiev attacked the area in early August in a surprise turn of events since the years-long Russia-Ukraine war. Moscow has recently launched a counter-offensive, but the effort's yet to gain momentum. The governor of Kursk region saying areas within a 15-kilometer zone of the Ukraine border have been evacuated. And while Russia works on its Kursk counter-offensive, Putin orders the Russian military to hire more personnel. The president issuing a decree that will take effect on December 1st to increase Russia's troop numbers by 180,000, meaning a total of 1.5 million Russian troops in some way involved as the war in Ukraine drags on into a possible 3rd year. An earthquake of 5.47 magnitude struck Romania on Monday. Data from the German Research Centre for Geosciences showing the depth of the earthquake measuring 125 kilometres. Once high-profile BBC News presenter Hugh Edwards has been given a suspended 6-month sentence by Westminster Magistrates Court in London for being in possession of indecent images of children as young as 7 years old. The court ruling on Monday, the sentence comes with requirements, including the completion of a sex offender treatment programme and 25 rehabilitation sessions. The 63-year-old, who was arrested by the police in November, is alleged to have committed the offences between 2020 and 2022. Iran's president saying Monday Tehran will never give up on its missile program as it needs it for security, especially given its adversary Israel is able to, quote, drop missiles on Gaza every day. The Islamic Republic has for years defied Western calls to limit its missile program. The US and its allies have more recently accused Iran of transferring ballistic weapons to Russia for its war in Ukraine, imposing fresh sanctions on Moscow and Tehran. Both have denied the claims. Well, back to our top story tonight, the attempted assassination of Donald J. Trump for a second time. I'm joined now from Louisiana by former Secret Service agent and current president of Python Security Consulting, Donald Lane. So thanks for making time for us. Look, US President Joe Biden saying the Secret Service needs more help and calling for more resources. Do you agree with that?
Absolutely, yes. The Secret Service historically is a smaller agency, and I definitely believe, with these heightened, the heightened security around a lot of the protectees, particularly the former President Donald Trump, I do believe that an influx of personnel would help tremendously.
In that first assassination attempt a few weeks ago, there were a lot of criticisms about the way the security service around Trump behaved at the time, whether they missed things. Some said it was unfair speculation, but, one of the directors resigned over that. How does this compare to that in terms of the way the security service responded?
Well, in the first incident in July in, Butler, Pennsylvania, that was a total debacle. The Secret Service definitely dropped the ball. They should have been much better prepared. And so I don't think there's really much comparison between the two. For the one that happened here most recently, while they could have had more personnel there, the ones that were there, the agents that were there, did exactly what they should have done. They confronted this individual, prior to the former president being around that immediate area anyway. And, they were able to eventually apprehend him. So I look at, the one that happened here most recently as a success, although I'm hoping that the Secret Service will put more personnel on the detail to kind of widen the ring of protection around the former president, which I think is desperately needed.
Has the threat landscape in these kinds of attacks evolved in any way in recent years with regards to things like social media or the accessibility towards high-profile figures?
Yes, I do believe that's the case, with the kind of continuing explosion of social media, and also given a lot of divisiveness. There's a lot of divisiveness surrounding former President Donald Trump and him as a person and his family. And I think that, lends to a lot of the vitriol that you see coming out of folks' mouths around this campaign. And, I really believe that folks here in the United States need to tamp down that violent rhetoric, that causes folks who maybe aren't so stable to go out and try to do heinous, violent acts.
In terms of political and violent instability being the norm in the US, that's what some are suggesting now. That's the kind of the new normal. Would you agree with that?
I hope it's not. I certainly hope it's not the new normal. It's certainly been the case for the last few years. There's no doubt about that. What I'm hoping is that folks realize that there are ways to, if I disagree with someone politically, there's a way for me to legally and in a good faith way debate that person or have a disagreement with him or her and not resort to name calling or violence. And I'm hoping that folks realize we need to reel things back to an environment that's safer as we move forward, and where folks can have a political discord without name calling and threats and so forth.
Really interesting. Thank you. I mean, let's just talk for a moment about your level of expertise. You're a security consultant now, presumably advising high-profile figures about exactly this type of thing. How complicated is it to prepare and prevent this type of thing happening?
Well, if you have a system in place, it's not that it's necessarily complicated. It's certainly very involved oftentimes. There are a lot of different things to take into consideration, starting with the advance, securing the places where this protectee will be traveling or going to. And, so it's a very involved procedure. It requires a lot of personnel and a lot of expertise. I wouldn't say it's necessarily difficult, although it's taxing, certainly, with respect to time and with respect to a lot of things that need to get done normally in a very short period of time.
In terms of copycats, are you concerned about that in terms of seeing more frequency of this type of thing?
Always concerned about it, yes. It's a concern of mine all the time. I think as folks, again, particularly those who maybe are unstable or who have, something to prove or have some violent ideology, there's always the fear that they're going to see someone do this and decide, it's my turn to go out there and try to do this as well. So, I think agencies like the Secret Service need to be on guard for things like that, as they would, generally do for any event.
Former Secret Service agent and current president of Python Security Consulting, Donald Lane. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, to some business news now. And could TikTok be banned in America? Today sees the latest chapter in a long-running battle between TikTok and the US Justice Department. This time, a panel of judges reviewing TikTok's legal challenge against a law passed by Congress in April. The popular app saying it's a matter of free speech and protecting an open internet. And more headline-grabbing court battles as another US case begins Monday. This time, media mogul Rupert Murdoch battling 3 of his children over who'll get control of his companies News Corp and Fox News after his death. The family's vast empire estimated to be worth some $19.5 billion. And US plane maker Boeing today announcing big spending cuts and saying it's weighing up furloughs and a hiring freeze. This in response to a major strike by factory workers who voted against a proposal by the embattled company. Talks are expected to be mediated on Tuesday. A reminder of our top stories. Authorities investigate a motive as details continue to emerge about the suspected shooter in the second apparent assassination attempt against Donald Trump. World leaders and even Trump's political opponents have joined forces to condemn the attack and continued political violence. And evacuations as residents of Poland and the Czech Republic prepare for another night of heavy rain amid catastrophic floods across Central Europe. Well, that's all we've got time for now. Coming up next is Hadley Gamble and her special interview with the former Brexit Secretary David Davis. And at 1:30 p.m. Eastern Time, join Tom Burgess-Watson for Global News Today with special guest Martin Luther King Jr. III.